Hello everyone, KROW here. Now that the mid-season patch for Season 4 has finally had some time to settle in, it's once again time to extract the data for the top 500 tier list. But first, to summarize the patch, Junkrat got giga buffed, Orisa and Winston received some minor buffs, and Wrecking Ball got nerfed this time around. For the DPS, Echo and Junkrat got some decent buffs, and for the supports, Ana got a pretty sizable nerf, while Kiriko and Baptiste received some minor buffs in the patch. So let's compare how the tier list score values of each hero has changed since the start of Season 4. First up is DPS. Tracer is completely dominating all three regions and her score is heading straight to the moon. Because Ana's ability to contest Tracer has been nerfed through this patch, it's no surprise that Tracer has only gotten better in this meta, going from a high score to an even higher score than before. Widow and Hanzo are also holding tightly onto their S tier spots. As the side effects of Cassidy nerfs from a previous patch fade away into the distance, the playtimes have shifted back onto the two sniper heroes. But interestingly, Hanzo's score in the Americas has actually dropped rather than increased like the other two regions. This is primarily due to the changes in the tank meta, which we'll talk about that in a bit. And as stated, Cassidy's nerfs have dialed the hero back quite a bit, continuing to decrease in trends. It's very possible that his score will go down even further from now. For the rest of the heroes on the tier list, let's take a look at the patched heroes first. Echo's buff to her ultimate has gotten the hero some fine returns. Even disregarding the EU and American metas, even the Asia server, which has always favored the traditional dive DPS, is seeing almost a doubling in score. Meanwhile, the buff to Junkrat has yet to show any meaningful results. I guess we could say that the buff has had some impact in the Americas, but still, nothing really to take note of. Another hero to pay special attention to is Sombra. Starting in April, Sombra's score has been going up consistently and is still going on its upward trend. I'm sure this one has been pretty noticeable recently in ranked, with Sombra players popping up in basically every other game, despite the fact that she hasn't received any noticeable buffs to her kit. Amongst the other A tier heroes like Ashe, Genji, and Sojourn, Sombra is definitely starting to stand out. And to no surprise, both Reaper and Bastion are going down the barrel across all regions, although they can't exactly go any further down the tier list. Because the two heroes have a very distinct limitation on their abilities, it's unlikely to see an increase in their playtime, despite their massive overall of the tank meta. It's difficult to justify picking these heroes in games other than as surprise swaps, or if you're really desperate to burn down a tank that's spawn camping you. But even then, other one-shot heroes that can pick off the backline could still get better value. Overall, there isn't too much of a change in the DPS meta. Tracer is still Tracer, and Widow is still the Widow we all know, and the off-meta heroes are, well, they're about as out of the meta as they can get. So it's about time some of these heroes get some love from the devs, but maybe not as extreme as the one for Junkrat, excluding Mei of course. Even though she hasn't gotten any buffs or reworks lately, she's actually one of the most underrated heroes in the meta right now. She's basically a must pick for rush comps, and you can see the amount of value she gets in the pro scene. Even in the ranked meta, Mei is actually one of the best counters to Junkrat available, being able to block Rampage with her wallet with plenty of time to react, or even just isolating the tank when she doesn't have her ultimate available. Now for the core of this meta, it's the tank lineup. To start off, Winston takes a crown amongst the S tier tanks. We can see that his score has increased even in EU, where Winston is one of the least popular picks in the region. The small buff he had to his jump pack is definitely showing some kind of impact, not to mention his potential against the less mobile heroes in S tier right now. And of course there's Junkrat, who got completely raised from the dead, showing the most dramatic change in score we've seen across the tier list so far. The top 500 players' most played data has a tendency to accrue over time, so it's usually very difficult to see such a drastic change in score, but these buffs actually just broke the meta. But the craziest part about this is that the meta dominance has only occurred in EU and the Americas. In these two regions, Junkrat has become a meta-defining hero, affecting both DPS and supports alike. But in Asia, the hero would still sit at the bottom of A tier at best. As a result, the meta in Asia is the weirdest right now, retaining the Winston, D.Va, and Sigma tank meta from April. Let's quickly take a look at some of the other tanks that received the changes in the patch. For Wrecking Ball, did they really need to give this hero a nerf? It's pretty clear that he's going on a downward spiral, and it makes me a bit worried that he'll eventually end up like Roadhog and Orisa. But who knows, maybe once he's down in the gutter, the devs will giga buff him again like they did with Junkrat. Meanwhile, Orisa's buff had absolutely no impact on the hero at all. Despite the hero being a decent counter to Junker Queen, the prevalence of dive heroes as well as the long-range snipers prevent her from being a useful pick for the most part. Instead, we can see Reinhardt's health nerf from the previous patch still having an impact on the hero. Sigma and Ramattra are steadily decreasing in score as a result of Winston and Queen dominated meta, but to be fair, they're still pretty powerful on maps like Havana and Circuit Royal. Doomfist and Zarya are also not able to provide much of a solution to the meta shift. The counter tanks to Junker Queen are still too susceptible to dive comps, which make them difficult to play if the enemy tank has a half-decent hero pool. Finally, EU's preference for Diva is as usual, but watch out because decent Winston players won't overcommit to feed into your burst damage for free sooner or later. To summarize the tank tier list, most picks are going to be viable, excluding Roadhog and Orisa. Granted, some of the tanks kind of feel a bit oppressive sometimes. In Season 3, Roadhog, Orisa, Queen, and Zarya were kind of a problem child in the meta, but the current patch has saved 2 of the 4 heroes, although one of them got saved a bit too much in my opinion. But the real difficulty is in saving Roadhog and Orisa. But what do you know, we still have over 6+ months for his rework. And as for Orisa, we're back again full circle. At the end of the day, the issue is in her kit, and what role she exactly takes within the tank hero roster. Since her rework, it's been obvious that unlike any other tank, she doesn't have any kind of synergy with any hero. We still don't have anything remotely close to a team comp we can label with an Orisa. Now it's time for the supports with the new addition of Lifeweaver. To start off, Lifeweaver is quite literally trash, to no surprise. It's actually a complete mystery why he didn't get any buffs in the mid-season patch. And of course on the flip side is Ana, probably the most important hero in the meta. Despite receiving a substantial nerf, there's almost been no impact on the most played hero data for pretty obvious reasons. In fact, in Asia, her score actually went up further, which didn't seem to be even possible, to be honest. So across all the regions, it's pretty safe to say that the meta is built around the granny. Anyways, she's still technically showing signs of decreasing popularity, and like we discussed with Cassidy, it's going to take a decent amount of time for S tier heroes to fall down the tier list, so we might need to give this one a little bit more time. Back to the tier list, we should also take a look at Mercy. In general, her prowess is in her ability to enhance the value of DPS heroes, but because the current meta revolves around Junker Queen and Ana instead of DPS, it becomes a logical assumption to view the decrease in her scores as a byproduct of the recent patch. In addition, the rollback on her mobility tech has noticeably decreased her survivability and the enjoyability of the hero as well, leading to decreases even in the EU region, which has traditionally favored Mercy. The decreased score has essentially been redistributed back to Kiriko, but a lot of things have changed since Season 3, so her value isn't being placed in running a double flex support composition like Ana and Kiriko. Like we mentioned previously, Junker Queen has risen into the core of the meta, so Kiriko's score has increased only for the regions where Queen is showing dominance and has instead decreased in the Asia region. In other words, the primary driver of Kiriko's score is the Lucio-Kiriko duo rather than Ana-Kiriko. Running along the same lines, we have to pay special attention to the regional preferences for Brig. Last year, the Junker Queen rush comp consisted of Brig and Lucio, but with the arrival of Kiriko, the planes have shifted away from a Lucio-Brig backline onto a Lucio-Kiriko backline to enable both the rush style and provide a solution against Ana's anti-nade. Currently, Brig's primary role is being a peeler to her partner's support, which is 9 out of 10 times going to be Ana. With a preference for dive in Asia, it's no surprise that Brig's score is much higher in this region. Let's take a look at some of the other support heroes. Lucio's score has gone up noticeably as a result of Junker Queen rush, and as for Baptiste, we can make the argument that his score increase is in part due to his buff, but I think it has more to do with the effectiveness of traditional rush comps with Reinhardt or Ramattra. And of course there's Zenyatta. His score tends to correlate with the frequency of Ana's Zen comps in this season, so Asia reflects an increase in score, while EU hasn't changed too much. In the Americas, Zenyatta's stake in the meta has been decreasing noticeably due to the fact that he doesn't directly enable or have counterplay against Junker Queen. To summarize the support tier list, I'm honestly a bit tired of Ana being so necessary in this meta. Outside the occasional oddball metas that pop up, she's been so powerful throughout most of the game's history. I'm surprised we're still struggling to find a balance point for this hero. And well, who knows what even happened to Moira? They might as well try out some of the experimental card changes that were shared 2 years ago, just to change things up.